All right, guys. Starting the live at 11:30. Just gonna let a couple more people get in here. I'll show you guys what we'll be talking about today. So today we're gonna go over still working at age 65 and how that pertains to Medicare. Again, we're just now at 11:30. I'll let a few more people trickle in. Let me get my slides together. All right. So we'll go ahead and get rolling. I'm Brandon Gonzalez over here at PIA, Pontotoc Insurance Agency, doing our Monday live. We do these every Monday at 11:30. So today, what this is going to be about is they're always about Medicare, Medicare made simple, and things like that. So, but today we're going over still working at age 65, and what that means for you, and how your Medicare journey looks because not everyone retires at 65. Some people continue to work just because they don't want to go home and be bored, or everything's going pretty good how it's going right now, so they want to keep working, keep them young. So still working at 65. We're going to go over all these kind of things: employer coverages, HSAs, and when to delay Part B and how to do that safely. All right. So in the next 20 minutes, we're going to go over those things I just mentioned, whether to enroll or delay enrolling in Part B, how to protect your HSA, and then how to exit without a penalty. And those are the three decisions that you need to make sure that you have to make sure that you get correct. Because you guys know with Part B, if you don't enroll in Part B, and you don't have credible coverage, then you will incur a penalty that never goes away. So just got to remember that. But there's definitely ways to do it safely, and there's definitely a way to do it not safely. All right. So here's one rule that's really big. And we'll do, hold on, give me one moment. I forgot to do, okay, it is on. All right. Get back to the screen. Sorry, I had a phone call there. Okay, so the rule that decides everything: how big is your employer, right? If you have more than 20 employees, then your employer plan stays primary. It's going to pay first. That allows you to safely delay Part B. So basically, 20 plus employees, you can just look at it as that counts as credible coverage. Okay, so Medicare is optional for you as long as you're actively working, and that actively working is just going to determine, your credible coverage, and that's what's going to allow you to not take Part B off the rip. Okay, but if you have if you have fewer than 20 employees at your job or where you're employed, then your employer plan might not count as credible coverage. And then in that case, Medicare would become primary, even if you never enrolled. Your employer plan may pay almost nothing until Medicare does, and you generally need Part A and Part B on time. So that's one big key there. Just what Medicare deems as credible coverage, right? You can't just have some random thing at some random employer. It does matter, okay? So one thing that you might need to do is ask your HR department, is our plan primary or secondary to Medicare, or will this count as credible coverage? And they should be able to help you out with that. So moving on. Part A, it's going to say free for most here, but it's not always harmless. That scenario just means that people tell you to get Part A just because you've already paid for it, pretty much. But you got to have 10 plus years of work history. You got to work and pay 40 quarters of taxes to qualify for Part A. All right. So most people do take that at 65, even while they're still working, just because it doesn't cost you anything monthly to have. Typically, if you've worked and paid 40 quarters of taxes, and you can pair it with your employer plan, things like that. But what is Part A? Again, we've went over this in our previous episodes, but Part A is just your hospital insurance. Just quite literally your room. There is a small or not small, but there's a deductible on that. But the premium for Part A typically is going to be $0. But there's one exception. It's going to be HSA contributions. So enrolling in Part A ends your ability to contribute in your maybe your employer health savings account. So if you're still funding an HSA, So you would consider delaying Part A as well. But if you're drawing Social Security already, then Part A enrollment will be automatic. So just some nuanced things that people probably have never told you, you probably didn't know. The HSA thing was something that stood out to me when I first started going over all of this stuff. If you're, enrolled in Part A, then you can no longer contribute to your employer HSA. So that's a big one there. All right, and then after Part A, obviously you have Part B. It says here the $202.90 a month question, but now it could be more than 202.90 for you. And we went over that in our last episode. That it's an acronym called IRMA, Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. The 202.90 is what the typical person might pay, but if you make over a certain amount, or if you did in the past 2 years, because they have a 2-year look back. So if you're retiring in 2026, then they're going to look at your 2024 tax return, and they're going to determine how much your Part B is going to cost. And if it's over a certain amount, if you're single, or if it's over a certain amount, if you're married, then it will be more than 202.90. Just comment below or give us a quick call, and we can help you determine that as well. But for the purpose of this slide, um, you know, this slide deck is for people that are still working at age 65, meaning that they have employer health coverage, and that might be free to them, and they're wondering if they should, they're wondering why they should enroll in Part B because it costs them money, right? So, there's a couple of things that go along with that. And I tell all of my retirees, you're used to employer coverage, you're used to an 80/20 co-insurance plan, you're used to co-pays and out-of-pockets and stuff that you can't really budget for. And when you're 65 and eligible for Medicare and you have guaranteed issue rights because you're brand new, it makes a lot of sense to get something that you've never had access to, right? And I just mean that you could quite literally get a plan that, you know, you wouldn't have copays, you wouldn't have deductibles, or you wouldn't have all these things that you've been used to your whole life. So you really need to consider taking Part B, but it's not always the right option, and that's what we're going to go over. So when is delaying Part B safe? Again, it's only when you're working and actively and you have current coverage that is deemed credible by Medicare. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you want to continue to have your work coverage, just because people do it all the time, and then when they come off of that work coverage, they will have another guaranteed issue rights period to utilize if they do it correctly. So moving on. Late enrollment penalty. Yeah, this is what we've been talking about this whole time, right? In all of these episodes, Part B does have a late enrollment penalty. Part D has that as well. Those are both irrevocable. You get one, then you're going to have it, for a long, long time. So late enrollment penalty is forever. Example, 3 years late. So if you were 3 years late, like let's just say that you thought about retiring at 65, but you wanted to keep working at wherever you were, and that was at a place less than 20 employees, and that was not deemed credible coverage, and you were now 68 and you're 3 years late. Okay, so it's 10% added to your Part B premium for every 12-month period you were late. So that would be 30% in this scenario, permanently. So on the 2026 premium, it's about $61 extra every month over a 20-year retirement, roughly $14,600, and it grows as premiums rise. So you can see where that would be a major, major issue if you didn't understand that your work didn't qualify as credible coverage. So it's always better to check up on that. A lot of times it does, but I guess not every time it does. So, all right, moving on. So here's where we're talking about with the Part A. If you enroll in Part A, then you wouldn't eligible to continue to contribute to your HSA. So this is what this is. It's called the HSA trap. So HSAs and Medicare don't mix. Any Medicare enrollment ends HSA contributions, even Part A alone. Contributions after enrollment are excess contributions. They're taxed and they're penalized. Maybe you need to read that again, but that's pretty big. Enrolling after 65, Part A backdates up to 6 months. So your enrollment is made retroactive. Stop HSA contributions 6 months before you file. Number three, you can still spend it. HSA balance stays yours, but you use them tax-free for Medicare premiums, deductibles, and copays and stuff like that. So 2026 HSA limits, if you're just by yourself, it's $4,400. If you have your family, it's $8,750. And then it's $1,000 catch up at 55 plus. All right. So here are some other things that don't count. So what we talked about is working at a place with less than or 20 or fewer employees doesn't count. So also COBRA and retiree plans don't count. So only coverage from active employment protects you from the Part B penalty. All right. So COBRA continuation coverage, retiree health plans, severance package coverages, individual and marketplace plans, like those do not count. And around here, especially in North Mississippi, marketplace is pretty big, right? So a lot of people could have that and they would say that it counts as credible coverage, but it does not. All right. What does count is your own employer's group plan while you're still there, or your spouse's employer plan while they're still actively working. All right. Oh, that's a big thing at the bottom. I almost skipped it. So your 8-month enrollment clock starts when active employment or the group coverage ends, whichever comes first. Taking COBRA does not pause that period. Okay. So we have to make sure that we're actively working. All right. And here's that 8-month exit window that we talked about. So employment coverage ends. That starts a window. You have 63 days to get a plan. That just means that you have a guaranteed issue, right? So I talked to a lot of people. I've actually helped a lot of people retire that still worked at 65. Maybe they were going to 67, things like that. So they had their Part A, right? All of these people that I'm referencing, they took Part A whenever they were eligible for it at 65, and then they delayed their Part B because they had credible coverage. Okay, so as soon as that work coverage ends, you have a 63-day guaranteed issue window that basically makes it the same as your IEP, your initial enrollment period, to where you can get a plan that, you can get a Medicare supplement and you don't have to answer health questions, or you don't have to qualify, at least by health reasons to be able to get that. You'll be guaranteed that policy. So that's a 63-day window after your employment coverage ends. And then from when your employment coverage ends up until 8 months after that, that's your deadline for Part B penalty free. Okay. So after that 8 months, even though you did have credible coverage, if you, delayed that and didn't think about it, and then you were past that 8-month window and you still didn't get Part B in that 8-month window, then the penalty will apply. And that's what that says. So after that, penalties plus wait for general enrollment. Pro tip, don't use the whole window. Start your Part B application about a month before your last day of work, so coverage begins the day that the employer plan ends, because you don't want a gap, you don't want to be scrambling, and you don't want to have to wonder if that penalty is going to apply to you or not. So here is kind of a playbook at 65. So if you're working somewhere at 65 still and you don't want to retire yet, and you're somewhere with 20 plus employees, and you want to stay on that plan. Now, just because you're working somewhere that has credible coverage doesn't mean that you have to stay on that. It just gives you the option. So if you're in that scenario, then you can confirm with HR that the plan is, that it qualifies. Number two, if you're funding an HSA, you need to consider delaying Part A as well, and don't take Social Security for now, because if you take Social Security, then your Part A enrollment will be automatic. So keep that in mind. Delay Part B, save the $202 a month. If your work coverage is free and it's decent and you like it, then I guess you can keep it. But the last thing there is calendar the retirement checklist. Part B, 1 month out, prescription drug plan within 61 days. If you're under 20 employees at where you're working, or you don't have a group plan, and you're 65 years old, then you need to enroll in A and B. Okay, you don't need to miss that because you do not have credible coverage. Simple as that. Here's a lot of things that we see. A lot of people think that COBRA or a retiree plan counts as credible coverage, but it doesn't. Not a lot of people know about the HSA contributions. So that one's pretty big. Number three there, delaying Part B at a small employer where Medicare is already primary, missing the 63-day guaranteed issue window, or waiting until the last day of work to start your Part B application. So you need to go ahead and have that done. Let's just say that if you were doing it this year and your your last day of work, like you were retiring at work, or your last day of work was going to be August 31st, then your Part B effective date needs to say September 1. Okay, because as long as that says September 1, we can get you what you need, and it can start on the first. Okay. All right. So wrapping this up here, if you wanted to, if you didn't want to deal with your own HR, or if you had more questions, or if you just wanted us to explain something a little more to you, you can bring some stuff to us. We can look at it. We don't charge you a fee for that. We can help you map out your retirement strategy. Um, there's no pressure in that. At least asking a question from someone that really understands it is always going to be best case scenario. So you can give us a call, 662-200-2249. You can comment below, or you can come by and see us. We're over here in Pontotoc Insurance Agency. But just be on the lookout. We're going to do some more lives. Obviously, we do these every Monday. They're at 11:30, during the week. So y'all just keep a lookout for those. But for me and for us, this is it. And this was, if you're still working at 65, this was really important to you because you needed to know kind of the map to do things. But if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.